She came home glowing like the world had healed her, dragging a sun-bleached suitcase up the steps of the house I used to share with her. And for the first time in our marriage, the silence she met belonged to me, not her. I was already on the porch when she rounded the corner, suitcase wheels rattling against the uneven concrete like something cheap breaking apart. Emily Carter, my wife on paper, stranger in reality, looked sun-warmed and careless, the kind of glow people get when they run from responsibility long enough to convince themselves they're searching for clarity. 2 weeks in Bali had bronzed her skin, bleached her hair a shade lighter, and carved something smug into the edges of her smile. She expected home. She expected warmth. She expected me. The driveway behind her looked wrong without my truck in it. Wide, empty, exposed. For years it held the weight of long days and late nights, the kind of miles a man puts on a vehicle when he's trying to outrun a marriage that keeps shrinking around him. Now it was just space, clean, untouched, a message in itself. She stopped at the foot of the porch and blinked at me like I was a misplaced piece of furniture. "Hey," she said, breathless, too soft, like nothing had happened. I didn't move, didn't speak. I watched her eyes travel to the spot under the flower pot where the spare key used to be. I could almost track her memory. She'd placed the pot there herself, told me it was cute, and said the yellow flowers made the porch look less bare. She lifted it with one hand, confident, almost lazy. Nothing underneath. She blinked, set it down, lifted it again, slower this time, as if the key might appear if she just believed in it. I'd removed it 2 days earlier, the same night the last part of me cracked open and let the truth in. If she wanted distance, she'd get it. All of it. She straightened, confusion tightening her mouth. "Did you move it?" Her voice wavered for the first time. I didn't say a word. I'd spent days inside that same house, sitting in the living room staring at a blank wall where her voice used to be. Every time I tried to reach her, text, call, email, I found another block, another shut door, another version of the silence she was so generous with when she needed space. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself she just needed time. I told myself anything that would keep the pain quiet. But then I realized something sharp and honest. She wanted distance so badly she erased me. So I returned the favor. She reached for the doorknob like she expected the metal to recognize her palm and give way out of habit. It rattled, locked. She tried again, harder. Then again, with both hands shaking the frame. The porch swallowed her panic. She rang the bell once, waited, rang it again, longer this time. Her face pulled tight. Anger fighting with confusion, confusion losing to fear. Inside the house, everything stayed still. I didn't answer. I didn't even shift my weight. I just stood there, arms crossed, leaning against the railing like I was watching a storm roll in from a safe distance. Her storm, not mine. "Can you open the door?" she asked finally, voice cracking. I thought we were going to talk when I got back. Talk. That was rich. I let the silence work. Let it breathe. Let it settle into her bones the way her silence had settled into mine. Cold and heavy and final. She'd spent years choosing when I could speak, when I could feel, when I could ask for anything without being dismissed. She had curated absence like an art form. Now she was the one outside looking in. She pressed her forehead against the wood, palms flat on the door like she could feel for life inside. "Please," she whispered, the first real word she'd said. I watched her break from the place she'd left me in. This, her confusion, her panic, her reckoning, was the first time in years she had to sit with the silence she forced on me. And I let her sit with it, let her taste it, let her understand the kind of emptiness you create when you treat someone like a placeholder. She turned slowly, eyes sweeping the empty driveway, the dark windows, the porch where I stood like the last witness to a marriage already gone cold. She thought she was coming home. She didn't know she'd lost it long before she stepped off the plane. I remember the exact moment she said it. We were standing in the kitchen, the same place where we used to eat late-night leftovers straight out of the pan, laughing at things that weren't funny. Now her back was to me, hands braced on the counter like she needed it to stay upright. Her voice was flat, stripped of warmth, stripped of us. I think I need space. The words fell out soft, but they hit like someone had slipped a knife between my ribs and twisted. I waited for her to turn, to look at me, to give me something. Anger, guilt, anything human. She didn't. Her eyes stayed on the sink, focused on nothing. How long? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. Just time. Time, space, distance. The vocabulary of someone already halfway out the door. I should have fought her on it. Should have grabbed her shoulders and made her look me in the eye and tell me the truth. That she wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't searching. She was gone. But instead, I stepped closer and wrapped my arms around her. She didn't lean into me, didn't hug me back. Her body stayed stiff, cold, like she'd already detached herself from the man she once swore to love. I held her anyway because I still believed contact could fix it. I'll be here when you're ready, I murmured into her hair. It was the last lie I told myself. That night, she slept facing the wall. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe like she was practicing living without me. Every inhale belonged to a life I wasn't part of anymore. In the morning, she packed light, small carry-on, easy clothes, no jewelry. She didn't want to leave traces. At the airport, she hugged me like someone thanking a stranger for holding the elevator. Quick, polite, hollow. Text me when you land, I said. She nodded, but her eyes were already somewhere else. I watched her walk through security, watched her not turn around, watched her disappear in a crowd of people who weren't losing anything. That should have been my warning. That should have told me everything. But love makes men stupid, loyal, blind. 10 minutes after she boarded, I checked my phone. No text, no message, nothing. An hour later, I tried to call her. Straight to voicemail. By the time her plane landed, my number was blocked. I didn't find out immediately. At first I thought the lack of message was just her needing space. It wasn't until I tried to send a picture of the dog, something normal, something harmless, and got the gray bubble of failure that I realized what she'd done. I checked social media. Blocked. Email. Blocked. Even the old joint account we never used. Blocked. Felt less like rejection and more like execution. Every attempt to reach her was a small funeral. A brick sealing the door behind her. A reminder that she wasn't just taking space. She was erasing the part of her life that had me in it. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it might glow back to life if I waited long enough. Didn't. All I had was silence. The same silence she'd always been so comfortable with. The kind that told me I wasn't part of her world anymore. I broke a little. Not the loud kind of break men get blamed for. The quiet kind that sits in your chest like a weight you can't cough out. I kept telling myself she'd unblock me eventually. That this was temporary. That she just needed to breathe. But the truth was simple and sharp. She wasn't coming back. And I had handed her the freedom to leave without a fight. I didn't know the details at the time. I only learned them later, pieced together through things she admitted in fragments, things her friends slipped by accident, and the tone she carried when she finally spoke to me again. But once I saw the full picture, everything made sense. Her first night in Bali was loud. Bars spilling Americans onto the street, cheap neon lights, the smell of fruit, sweat, and ocean mixing into something that felt like permission. She let herself vanish into it. She drank sweet cocktails that hit too fast. She danced barefoot in sand that stuck to her calves. She laughed at jokes from men she just met, letting their attention fill the space where her marriage used to live. She told herself it wasn't cheating. Just fun. Just air. Just what I need. But the truth was quieter. She wanted to feel wanted without the weight of memory attached. She walked the beach at night, drunk, carrying her sandals, humming songs from college years she claimed not to miss. She liked the idea of being unreachable, of being a ghost in a place where no one expected anything from her. For a while it worked. She felt free, light, untethered. But freedom borrowed like that always comes with interest. By the fourth day, the glow was thinning. She woke with headaches that weren't from alcohol. She watched couples holding hands during sunset and felt something twist hard in her chest. She saw a man brush sand from his girlfriend's shoulder and flinched like the gesture hit her physically. She told herself she wasn't thinking about me, but she was. Little things started scratching at her. The way a local family shared breakfast together. The way two friends argued in another language and still stayed close. The sound of a man's laugh reminded her of mine for half a second. Memories started leaking into her days. Quiet mornings in our kitchen, movie nights, the way I used to rub her back without thinking. Regret is slow, but precise. Comes for you when you run out of distractions. One morning, she tried to unblock me, to send a picture of the sunrise, some poetic attempt to reconnect, maybe pretend nothing had happened. But when she opened my profile, she saw the words she never expected. You can't message this person. Blocked. By me. That was the moment. The snap. The point where her entire trip soured. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook. She tried again. Same message. She checked social media. Same thing. She tried to email me. It bounced. She started Googling how to tell if someone blocked you and hated herself for it. Then came the panic. A real sharp kind. The kind that wakes you up. She made burner accounts, 3 of them. Tried to look me up. I tried to see if I was active. I tried to see if I had posted anything. Nothing. I didn't just disappear. I had finally stopped waiting. And for the first time since she boarded that plane, she felt the cost of her choices. Not the version she romanticized, space, clarity, freedom, but the real cost. Losing the one person she counted on to stay. Back home, around the same time she was scrambling for connection, I stopped checking my phone for her name. I stopped wondering when she'd unblock me. The ache had burned itself out. I felt not angry, not bitter, just done. She sat on the edge of her rented bed that night, listening to the waves break on the sand like something mocking her, telling her she'd pushed too far. She tried to convince herself I was being dramatic, petty, overreacting. But a man can only be erased so many times before he chooses a different life. She learned that lesson alone, thousands of miles from home, with her phone screen lighting up a truth she never thought she'd face. I wasn't hers to return to anymore. It happened 2 nights after she boarded the plane. The day itself was quiet, too quiet. I'd gone through work on autopilot, ate dinner without tasting anything, moved through the house like a man watching his life through glass. But when midnight hit, something inside me shifted. Not a crack. Collapse. I was standing in the kitchen drinking water straight from the faucet, the house dark except for the glow of the refrigerator light leaking onto the floor. My phone sat on the counter, screen black, empty, cold. The silence felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was pressing on my chest. I tried to breathe. Didn't work. Tried again. Nothing. My heart kicked into overdrive, hard, violent thuds hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out. My hands went numb. My vision tunneled. My legs shook so badly I dropped to my knees because standing felt impossible. That's when the truth hit me. I wasn't having a rough night. I was breaking. I grabbed my phone and tried calling her. Once, twice, 6 times. Each call slid straight into voicemail, her recorded voice playing like a taunt, calm, detached, telling me to leave a message after the beep. Knowing damn well she'd never listen. By the 7th attempt, my breath was nothing but short, sharp gasps that scraped my throat raw. My chest tightened till it felt like someone had wrapped a belt around it and pulled. My fingertips tingled. My arms felt like they weren't mine. I wasn't dying. But try convincing your body of that in the moment. I curled on the kitchen tile, cold against my cheek, palms pressed to the floor like I needed the house to hold me up. I wasn't thinking about her leaving. I wasn't thinking about Bali or space or clarity. I was thinking about the fact that the woman I built a life with didn't want to hear me breathe. Not even in distress. Abandonment doesn't always come with slammed doors. Sometimes it shows up in the form of unanswered calls at 2 in the morning, echoing into a void that used to be a marriage. Eventually the worst of it passed. Not because I calmed down, but because my body ran out of panic. I lay there sweating through my shirt, chest aching, arms limp, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting for something to save me. Nothing did. The next morning I couldn't pretend anymore. Not to myself, not to whatever was left of my pride. I needed help. Not from her. Not from anyone who'd watched me shrink for years. From someone who didn't know me at all. A week later, I checked into a silent retreat on the outskirts of town. No phones. No internet. No forced conversations. Just walls built for people trying to crawl out of whatever hole they'd fallen into. That's where I met Eva Moreno. She wasn't what Emily imagined when she later saw the picture. She wasn't some romantic distraction or convenient rebound. She was a therapist with steady eyes, a quiet voice, and the kind of presence that didn't demand anything from me. She didn't coddle. She didn't judge. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in a panic. I learned how to breathe without feeling guilty for it. She made me take walks in the morning sun. Slow ones, the kind where your lungs expand without hurting. She reminded me that being strong isn't the same as being numb. And she made me speak out loud all the truths I'd been swallowing for years. I keep waiting for her to come back, I admitted once. Eva just nodded. Maybe it's time to stop waiting. Simple words. Harder than anything Emily had ever said to me. By the fourth week, I could feel my spine again. My voice. My direction. I remembered who I was before I bent myself into shapes that made someone else comfortable. And for the first time since the kitchen floor, I felt something close to solid. The retreat didn't erase the pain. It didn't rebuild me overnight. But it gave me enough clarity to understand something I had ignored for far too long. I had been disappearing. Quietly. Slowly. Piece by piece. And if I stayed in that marriage, I wasn't coming back. When I unlocked the door, the house didn't greet me. It just sat there. Quiet, stale, untouched. The same walls, the same furniture, the same framed photos pretending we were still a team. But all I saw was the version of myself who had lived there. Tired, deluded, shrinking in small ways that didn't look like surrender until they stacked up. I walked through each room slowly, not because I was soaking in memories, but because I was taking inventory of what no longer belonged to me. The kitchen where I'd hit the floor. The hallway where we used to steal kisses before work. The bedroom where she'd slept facing the wall long before she asked for space. Everything was familiar, but none of it was mine anymore. I opened the closet and stared at my side. Shirts lined up, boots polished, belts I only wore for jobs that drained me. I grabbed the first armful of clothes and dropped them into a donation bag. Then another. Then another. Half the closet disappeared in less than 15 minutes. It didn't feel dramatic. Felt clean. The house didn't creak or protest. It just watched me reclaim my air. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my banking app, and transferred my entire half of our shared savings into her name. Not a gesture of grace. Not guilt. Just clarity. I didn't want a tether. I didn't want a future argument. I didn't want her thinking I owed her anything or she owed me something back. Let her have it. Let her have everything tied to the past. I was done paying for a life that had already closed itself off to me. Next came work. I pulled up my contract, typed out a resignation letter. Short, direct, unemotional, and hit send. No explanations. No apologies. I'd spent years working myself into the ground for a job that treated me like a replaceable part. They'd manage without me. They always had. I packed only what felt real. A few clothes, the watch my father left me. A pair of boots that had molded to my walk. The journal Ava had handed me on my second week at the retreat. Everything else stayed behind. I wasn't interested in possessions that reminded me of someone I no longer recognized. When the suitcase was full, I zipped it once. Slow, deliberate, final. I walked through the house one last time. Not lingering, not reminiscing, just confirming that I hadn't forgotten anything worth carrying. The air felt different, lighter, mine. At the door, I paused. Not for her, not for us, but for the man who had sat inside these walls begging for acknowledgement, starving for scraps of affection, trying to make a marriage breathe when it had been dead for months. I'm done disappearing, I said to the empty house. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. I locked the door behind me, slid the key into the mailbox slot, and walked to the car. No trembling. No regret. No second thoughts. When I drove out of town, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Not once. I wasn't running. I wasn't chasing. I was leaving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace, quiet, steady, earned. I wrote the letter at a small table in a quiet cafe the morning after I left town. No noise, no rush. Just the scrape of my pen and the steady hum of people living lives I wasn't part of. I didn't rehearse anything. Didn't plan. I let the truth come out clean, without decoration, without anger. Truth doesn't need volume. I started with her name, Emily. Not M. Not Babe. Just the name of a woman I used to love in a way that hurt more than it healed. The first lines were simple. I waited for you to unblock me longer than I want to admit. I kept checking my phone like a fool, thinking maybe the silence meant you were figuring things out. What it really meant was that I wasn't wanted. No bitterness in it. Just a fact. I wrote about the days after she left. The empty house. The walls that swallowed my voice. The nights I slept with my phone on my chest hoping for a vibration that never came. I wrote about how every blocked message felt like getting erased one swipe at a time. I wasn't angry at first, I told her. I was confused. Then it hurt. Then I'm tired. Mostly tired. I told her about the panic attack without describing it in detail. She didn't deserve the whole picture. Just the truth that I had broken alone while she danced oceans away. You didn't leave me, I wrote. You disconnected from me. There's a difference. Leaving is a movement. Disconnecting is severing. You cut the power and didn't look back. Then I told her the part one had never said out loud. I kept shrinking myself to fit the space you left me with. I didn't notice how small I'd become until the night my own body told me it couldn't do it anymore. The pen didn't shake. My hand didn't hesitate. There's a strange peace in telling someone exactly what they did without dressing it in blame. Then I told her where I was going. I'm taking a job in Spain. I'm not running from you. I'm walking toward the life I stopped chasing when I built everything around you. I don't expect you to understand. I don't need you to. I described the coastline I planned to live near, the smaller apartment, the quiet routines, the language I was going to learn with an accent that would probably embarrass me at first. I wrote about wanting mornings that didn't hurt and nights where I didn't wait for someone who wasn't coming home. Then came the hardest line. Don't do this to the next person who loves you. Not a threat. Not an accusation. A warning. A hope. The closest thing to grace I had left to offer. I didn't tell her I forgave her. I didn't tell her I hated her. I didn't tell her I wished things were different. I told her the truth. You taught me what silence can do to a man. I'm choosing a life where I don't have to fear it anymore. At the end, I signed my name. Not the way she used to write it on birthday cards, not with flourishes or affection. Just my name, sharp and final. A boundary she couldn't cross this time. I folded the letter into thirds, slid it into an envelope, and wrote her address slowly, letting each number settle like a nail in a coffin. I walked it to the mailbox across the street. The sun was warm. The air was clean. I dropped it without ceremony. The metal clanged shut. That was it. The last thing tying me to her. As I walked back toward my car, I felt something shift. Not relief. Not triumph. Just release. A quiet letting go that didn't need witnesses or approval. She'd read it eventually. Maybe she'd cry. Maybe she'd get angry. Maybe she'd try to twist the meaning into something softer so she could sleep at night. Didn't matter. The letter wasn't for her. It was for the man I refused to abandon ever again. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be. Some moments write themselves. I could imagine it perfectly. Her walking up the steps with that practiced confidence, suitcase rolling behind her, already forming the apology she thought might patch things enough to keep her comfortable. She probably expected the place to feel tense, maybe cold, but still alive with me somewhere in the background. That's how she'd always treated problems. Ignore them long enough and assume they'll wait patiently. But the apartment didn't wait for her. I pictured her stepping inside and freezing in the doorway. The air is different. The weight is different. The kind of emptiness that doesn't come from someone stepping out temporarily. It comes from someone who left with full intention. She would have seen the first sign immediately. The closet half empty. My shirts are gone. My boots are missing from their corner. The belt she once teased me about leaving on the chair nowhere in sight. Not messy, not chaotic, just removed. Clean extraction. My cologne, the one scent she always leaned into even when she was angry, wasn't on the dresser anymore. The bathroom counter had space where my razor and shaving cream used to be. My side of the medicine cabinet blank. The kitchen would have hit her harder. The coffee mug I always used was gone. My thermos. My favorite knife. Small things, but unmistakable. It takes a certain kind of finality to erase your daily footprint. She probably walked through the rooms touching things, trying to connect the dots, trying to convince herself this wasn't what it looked like. But the truth was in every empty inch she reached for. She'd call me, of course she would. She'd wait for the line to ring. It wouldn't. Blocked. Still blocked. Her messages wouldn't be sent. Not even a delivered badge. She'd reach for me the same way I once reached for her. Desperate, confused, bargaining with silence. This part I didn't have to imagine. I felt it, because while she stood in that apartment realizing what she lost, I was sitting on a balcony overlooking a narrow Spanish street, night breeze pushing at my shirt, the city humming with unfamiliar sounds. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt released. There's an ache that comes with it, sure. A soft pull in the chest when you admit to yourself that the life you built is truly over. But beneath it was something steadier, stronger. Relief that felt almost like forgiveness, but aimed at myself, not her. She wanted space. For years she wanted it without saying the words. She finally got it. Not the curated, convenient kind she expected. The real kind, the irreversible kind. And as she stood there, staring at the empty half of the closet that once held the man who would have done anything for her, I knew the truth had hit her fully for the first time. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hurting on the floor anymore. I wasn't hers anymore. Somewhere in that apartment, she learned what silence actually feels like when it isn't under her control. Thousands of miles away, sitting with a cup of bitter Spanish coffee, I felt the thread between us snap. Not violently, not with rage. Just a quiet, final break that made more room in my chest than pain ever had. Peace doesn't always feel soft. Sometimes it feels like standing alone in a place that's finally big enough for your life. I didn't go back home after I mailed the letter. I didn't check for updates. Didn't look for her name in notifications. Didn't chase closure she should have given me months before. Instead, I stepped off a plane in Spain and let the unfamiliar air hit my lungs like something clean. My first days there were clumsy. My Spanish was broken, barely functional, but people were patient enough to let me stumble through. I learned how to order coffee the way the locals drank it. Strong, small, honest. I walked narrow streets lined with old stone buildings and laundry swaying from balconies like quiet flags. Every morning felt tight and bright, like the world was waking up with purpose. I rented a small apartment near the coast. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just a place where my heartbeat didn't feel like a burden. The ocean was close enough that I could smell it when the wind shifted. Some mornings I'd sit on a bench overlooking the water and just breathe. No waiting, no checking my phone, no shrinking. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, she retraced her steps. I didn't know the details at the time, but I could imagine it clearly. Bali again, the same beaches, the same blue, the same sunsets she once used as escape routes. She walked the shore at dawn, toes carving weak lines into the sand. But the feeling was different now. The place hadn't changed, but she had. Running only works when you don't know what you're running from. She wrote things in the sand, little confessions meant for no one but herself. One of them, she admitted later, was 5 words. I blocked love to feel free. Regret is a slow tide. It reaches you long after the shore has moved on. She probably stood there waiting for the water to take the sentence away, hoping it would erase something more than the words. But the ocean doesn't erase choices. It just smooths over the surface so you can't see the depth anymore. While she was circling back to the start, I was building forward. I found work that didn't consume me. Met people who didn't know anything about my past and didn't need to. I started taking sunrise runs along the coast. feeling the burn in my legs and the clean pull of my lungs. I laughed more real, unforced, uncolored by waiting for something painful. My apartment was quiet, but it wasn't the silence I used to drown in. It was the kind that fills a room without making you feel alone. I cooked simple meals. I learned the names of the neighbors' dogs. I let life be small until it grew naturally again. Healing doesn't happen like a movie. It's slow, repetitive. You let go, then you let go again and then again until one day you realize there's nothing left to release. That's where I ended up. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just steady. She stayed a little longer in Bali than she planned. I walked the same beaches twice. I tried to feel something that used to come easy. But nostalgia without connection is just emptiness wearing a memory. By the time she boarded the plane home, our lives were already two separate tides moving in opposite directions. I wasn't watching anymore. I wasn't wondering. I wasn't waiting. Some endings aren't loud. They're just two people stepping into different currents, letting the water pull them where they were always meant to go. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel heavy. It felt open. I didn't forgive her. I didn't hate her. I didn't need either. I just walked forward.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.